ये आकाशवाणी दिल्ली है। कृपया हमारे अगले कार्यक्रम की प्रतीक्षा कीजिए।
India is the fourth largest energy consumer after China, USA and Russia. In today's program, we will talk about leveraging India's resources for a sustainable energy model. We have with us in the studio Mr. Neeraj Sharan, who is an international energy expert. He is also the member technical expert committee of the Government of India under Department of Science and Technology since June 2009. Welcome to the studio, Mr. Neeraj Sharan.
Thank you, Ravi. Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure.
Energy is an ubiquitous requirement. It is required for everything. So where do you see India's energy basket? We are on the cusp of what we could call transformational growth, transformational development. So in that context, where do you see India's current energy basket?
Ravi, let me start off with this one line that I tweeted that Government of India delivered a budget, and I call this C2C budget, which is the common man to the corporate budget. Behind this, we have very clear goals. The Prime Minister of India, the Government of India has got very clear goals that we want to push ourselves to double-digit growth. And if I may just stop here and say, this double-digit growth will not come until we have met our energy requirements, both to sustain and to get this growth. Now, you asked a very pertinent question, sustainable. I think sustainable energy has two facets, I believe. One is the midterm, and one is the long term. Mm-hmm. So far, we've had a basket of things that contributed to the energy supply for India. Fossil fuel that we know of, we have some hydro, we have some renewable energy, and a very, very minuscule amount of nuclear energy. As I see that, and I've been known to keep saying this, sorry for repeating this, but I always said the 19th century, if you will, belong to the fossil fuel, and the 20th century might belong to nuclear, but the 21st century belongs to renewable energy. Not that you're going to get away from all that you did. You've got to have a basket and make it balance. So as I see in the long term, I mean, it's very difficult to have a crystal ball, but I would say that maybe 50% of our energy basket could come out of the conventional energy. I would say that 20% of our energy could come out of nuclear. And the 30%, which is a major chunk, is going to come out of renewable energy sources. So 50, 30, 20 is what I see in the next 15, 20 years as a sustainable model on the long term. And I think we've started in that direction, but we have a long way to go on that.
Right. In fact, recently there was the power minister mentioned that to actually meet the aspirations of almost 1.2 billion Indians, and the aspirations are growing as we know, we would need something like $250 billion of investment over the next 5 years to meet these aspirations. So you've said that you have around 50% coming from the fossil fuels, you have some 20% coming from nuclear and other, and 30% from the renewable energy, which is solar and wind and other. So are we set to reach those levels over the next 10, 15 years, as you mentioned, or some transformational investments are required which are not hitherto coming forth?
Well, obviously everything requires money. Bottom line is we need money, and the numbers you gave are very correct, because even 3 weeks ago there was a big first time Global Reinvest 2015 that was organized by the Ministry of MNRE, Government of India, and the figures given is to meet those aspirations of long term, we need $200 billion to be invested in these different type of renewable energy. Now, there are some great policies that have been put in place, because money goes to where the profits are, and money goes naturally to a place where there is transparency, there is guarantee, there is democracy, there is justice. And we've had a situation a couple of years ago when everything was on paper very correct, but the money was not flowing in because the policy was not as transparent. People were stuck in various kind of litigations. But I think the policy now that is being put in place, the details of it will come very soon. But there are policies being done in the renewable energy sector that will attract FDIs, that will attract local capital. Stakeholders will come on board to do this whole basket of renewable energy that we are going to look at. I think the numbers are great. I mean, we are looking at some very, very big numbers, because they say that if you don't have the right energy, if you do not have, you drop 1% of your GDP. And we can't afford that. We have to go to double digits.
You put a number of almost 30% on renewable energy over the next 15, 20 years. That was a number that you had mentioned.
Yes, I do. I think give or take a few percent points.
And we are currently at what level, all these renewable sources put together?
You know, we have, for example, nuclear, I said, is currently we are at 2%. And just to give an example, I mean, it's just an example to benchmark us, as we don't need to go that way. France is at 78%, but they took a position in nuclear. The US is all at 28%. So we are at 2%. We have to go 10 times more to 20%. Currently, we have 6.5% of energy that comes out of renewable basket and sources. And we need to go from 6.5 to 30%. So that's 5 times more. And we have a plan. They say that in 2018, we'll go to 12%. Then maybe 2022, we'll go to about 22%. So my guess is maybe by 2025, between 2025 to 2030, we would be in the range of 30% of renewable energy.
When you look at renewable energy, the one sector which probably most of us are most in India, when we talk about renewable energy, most interested in, most enthused about, if I might use that word, is solar. Because if you look at the Indian map, you'll see most of the places in India, leave aside a few places in the northernmost border or the northeast area, most of the areas have sun almost 300 days a year. So that's an area which is probably has got the most potential. I hear figures like 600 terawatts a year, and the current installed capacity is much lower. So if you look at solar, where do you see India right now, and what is the growth forward?
Ravi, you said it right. I mean, we are fortunate that India, we have 300 to 330 days of sun in this country, almost across the nation. So that's the first starting point. That's why we are talking solar. And because we have 300 to 330 days of solar available here. And the second aspect, which is very crucial, is during the daytime when there is sun, that is when the peak consumption and load is of electricity. So it's kind of a interesting situation. You've got sun. We worship the god of sun. And we need to harness the energy into very productive form. So that is why solar is going to play a very important role. And if I may use the word, India could be the Saudi Arabia, if I'm positively using this word, India could be the Saudi Arabia of renewable energy as Saudi Arabia is to oil. To take that leadership position and take up a policy and a long-term look at the basket and be a player in solar and renewable energy as a leader in the world because of these natural resources that we have available. We don't need to then transport energy from one corner to the other. We can actually have these captive electricity using solar in the villages, because 80%, 700 million people still live in rural India, and the future demand of energy for growth, as we are talking about, is going to come out of rural India. So we really need to do something very transformational in the rural sector, and that is where the solar energy, both off-grid, on-grid, microgrid, home-based, all of them will begin to make a lot of sense. Decentralized, not dependent on one large grid, and affordable, because the operational cost is close to zero. And with this price change, the divergence of cost between conventional energy and solar energy has become so narrow today that we are looking at a very sweet spot from now onwards, that it's no longer going to be only driven as in the past by subsidies. So I think it's going to be a long, very interesting play.
You mentioned rural India. In fact, that is a very interesting point, because most of the political parties as well have been making promises in their manifesto about 24/7 electricity to rural Indians, which is hitherto been neglected, if I might use that word, largely. And the large demand that would come in the future would also come from rural India. One clear sector, one clear renewable energy that we could use in the rural area is solar, obviously.
Yes.
Are there other sources any other major renewable energy sources that could be probably across the country, secularly across the country, be used to kind of meet this demand that's going to come in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, Ravi. I mean, I think when we talk of renewable energy, I think there are 5 or 6 components to that. There is hydro, of course, and then we have geothermal, which is still in a very nascent state, but still is there. Then we have concentrated solar as well, Then we have photovoltaic solar. And then we have hybrid system, which is a combination of natural gas and solar. And then we have wind. Now, we've heard about wind. And we can say, and very easily, that wind is predominantly in areas which are coastal, A, and B in hilly areas where there is a gradient and there is wind. So all of this put together, based on the diversity, as I keep saying that India is so diverse, there is no one model that just go bang for every corner. I mean, if you go to Andhra Pradesh, I mean, there's so much wind out there. So I would guess that the wind will play a little bit more dominant role than solar in that part, whereas in the states of Rajasthan, the entire Hindi heart belt, the entire Rajasthan area, Punjab, all of North India would play a very important role using solar. So I think this basket of 6 options in varying degree will make a model that is very appropriate to the local conditions. And that's how it should be. And, you know, I think there's 74 million households, 7.4 crore households in India with no electricity. And, you know, we got to have our brothers and citizens of India come on board this growth. And we need to provide a basic form of electricity.
And they're becoming aspirational as well.
They are aspirational, and you just saw that, if I may just touch upon one word, that the mandate, subsequent mandate, every election is being given to governments which are talking about inclusive and equitable growth. And I don't think there's an option anymore. These were probably a little bit more buzzwords in the past, but this become appropriate. There's no option. We need to have them on board, this growth through employment. As I said, you know, we have a big challenge in this country. I don't know if you recall, Ravi, about 7-8 years ago, we suddenly started talking about the demographic dividend and the Indian asset of demographic dividend, where it has 2 sides. The sword is always has 2 sides. One side is that you have the youngest age demographic in the world, you know, 65% less than 35 years of age, but you need to give them jobs. So today's India's policy has to go through what I call the pro-employment growth. There is no other option. And that is why these 2 very, very deep thought policy that the current government is putting in place, and I think it's a very much deeper than what we normally talk in our drawing rooms and in our office space, is this Make in India and Skill India. These are 2 words which flank the Indian economy, both as a necessity to grow and as a survivor for India. We cannot survive without this. And both of them need energy.
So, okay, if we look at both of them need energy, and you're saying they both are critical to India's success and for transformational growth that we talk about. So if you look at milestones here onwards, so we said currently India has the resources. Some coastal areas have better access to wind energy. The northern part is probably better suited for solar energy. And of course, the hydrothermal is there wherever there are rivers. So that option is also there. Now, if I look at milestones going forward, what are those things that you would look at that the government or whosoever is in government in various states should be doing to ensure that we hit those milestones, to ensure that the 1.2 billion people, of which rural is a large number, have that kind of access to energy? So what are those milestones that you would say that this should happen for us to reach there?
You know, Ravi, the first thing is a mind shift that I believe that, you know, we are already talking between, we used to talk about megawatts earlier, and now we are talking of gigawatts.
And terawatts as well.
And terawatts as well, correct. The first mindset, I think, which is beginning to be talked about, and at least on paper it's there, but I am very hopeful that with the current initiatives it will change, is that this is not just a responsibility of the central government. So my first wishful think is, how do states and central government come on board to a joint mission? You know,
cooperative federalism is the word.
Yeah, exactly, collaborative. I mean, look at what happened in the fossil fuel business. We didn't change ourselves in the last mile. When I say the last mile, we were okay doing generation. We could do more efficient, but we were doing pretty good in generation part of it. And then we were transmission. We had some challenges in transmission, losses as we call them. But the distribution part, which is the last mile, where you actually generate revenues, where you go and supply electricity and charge revenues. We did not bring about that many transformation in the last mile. What was the result? The result was that if you look at every state electricity boards, the amount of debt that they have, I am not sure how they're going to pay back all of that. And then the central and the courts keep mandating the distribution company not to cut off power even if they don't get the money. So we need to be sure that the states play a very important role in the last mile, which is the distribution and collection of revenue. So I think I would say that this is a joint venture between the state and the central in both generating and distribution and collecting money. Maybe PPP models of private-public partnership with the state. I would want to see some sort of a state partnership also, because they are local to that area and they are best geared to ensure that the revenue collections are seamless and as with as little hurdles as possible. So that's the first thing.
Competitive populism would be an impediment to our energy security in that sense.
Absolutely. And I think states have begun to realize. I mean, I would say that if I use the word, Gujarat model has worked pretty well in this. And sometimes we don't really need to create new things. We have a lot of good things happening. We just make sure that we take it deep inside with a sense of responsibility. All of us are responsible, and execute this to the best health that we have.
So mind shift thinking, megawatt to gigawatt, and collaborative federalism. 2 points. Any other milestones that you see going forward for the energy security scenario to be favorable for India?
I think you see all these activism sometimes become deterrent to any policy that we have. And the activism can come out against any kind of technology, for or against. And sometimes we tend to react rather than respond. I mean, if you remember correctly, about 1 year ago, we had a lot of activism against nuclear energy. But if you look around, I mean, we lose precious days, Ravi. I mean, we cannot be political right now at this point. You've got to be political. This is for the country. This is for ourselves. We cannot leave a bankrupt India for our kids, for our next generation. So I truly believe that we need to step up above the political allegiances that anyone might have and look at India as a country and not bring in unnecessary activism for sometimes vested interest, and rise above and do that. So, and the second thing I would like to see is, when we have time and a long-term plan, measurable, it gets done, because you have a long-term plan. Anything we do for long, I think it begins to happen. So I would rather want to see 30-year plans, 40 years plan, 20-year, not this every year budget type of a thing. You've got to have a 20-year plan. Say, guys, we're going to stick to this plan. We may tweak it by 5%, but this is a plan for next 20 years. We're all committed, state, federal, all parties, all stakeholders, and just stick to the plan, do it. And believe me, Ravi, we can make a major change in this country if we have that sort of a mindset and approach.
But do you feel that in the Indian scenario, anything beyond 5 years, that kind of horizon is happening in India? Are you hopeful?
Well, so far, yes, we've had some plans which have gone beyond. We have a lot of good plans. But in real life, as you say, the winner is always the person who executes well. And that's where all these words of, if you wear India on your sleeve, and if you have the right heart and mind in place, you will do it. So I think we're going to move from these short-term plans to mid and long-term. We cannot go through these yo-yo rides. We were doing 9%. The damage we did to our country when we dropped from 9 to 5%. I'm not going into the cause of it, but definitely when you drop from 9 to 5, what people don't realize is when we were at 9% GDP, businesses, states, and federal government had put in and were investing to go to 10%, right? It doesn't happen overnight.
Correct.
So you put in investments to go from 9 to 10%, and you come down to 5. You think anyone can live off half the salary they earn today? It's a similar analogy.
Unlikely.
You cannot.
Yeah.
So we drop from 9 to 5 where we have the capacity. So we need to have a policy that does not take us. It's better to be 2% points less growth. But for sure, we need to constantly grow in steps that are strong, clear, and very, very directional.
All right. There's another aspect, because hitherto we've been speaking of energy with the perspective largely of power or electricity as we call it. The other aspect of energy, of course, is the fuel that we use to power our cars, which hitherto largely is coming from oil, crude oil. And if I look at it currently, almost 1/3 of the country's import bill is crude oil. So do you see anything changing there? Because when we looked at the case of US, the shift from crude oil to shale oil and other options has happened over the period of last 1 decade. So their dependence has come down. Are we also looking at some shift there? Because as long as 1/3 of our import bill comes from crude oil, that's one area, which is another area where there will be growth in demand, and huge growth in demand, vehicles, automobiles.
Correct, Ravi. I mean, you touched a very important point, two very quick points on that. One is that when we talk of renewable energy, then there is an element of environment, green, that comes into play. And second is, it's an import substitution of the 1/3 coal bill that you said, or the oil bill that you said. So we have foreign exchange reserves that will be here, which will then be allowed to bring in more money. So that's on that part. Now, on the automotive industry, and if you know that in the United States, Tesla cars are now becoming, right now it's more fad. It's becoming to be unacceptable. It's very expensive, but they just set up the first manufacturing in the world.
You mean the hybrid cars?
Yeah.
Hydrogen powered
Well,
cars?
there is a hybrid car and there's a full electric car as well, which is the Tesla brand.
Is that the hydrogen cell?
No, it's storage, electricity.
Okay, storage.
And they have a manufacturing unit in California. And in the entire manufacturing unit, there is not one single human being working. It's a full robotic plant. It's selling at expensive price right now, but the way they plan to do that in the next 5-10 years is to make that first step in the world. That I think at some point or the other, the shift from completely oil and gas cars to electric cars in India has to happen. Now, we are far away from that point. We are still looking at some world leaders to benchmark and prove something. But, ironic, I don't know the name of the enterprise, but now that we are talking, there was a small enterprise in Tamil Nadu that made electric car, and it was 10 years or 20 years ago. So we have a lot of technology and innovation available in the country. All it is required is to support these businesses that have the IP or the drive by funding, by supporting them. And when we can design nuclear plants, when we can go to moon, we can have missiles, why can we not design electric cars? So I think that percentage has to happen here, because if I may take you back to 97, Delhi was the 4th worst polluted city in the world at that time. I think Brazil being the worst. And then the government of Delhi and the government of India put a mandate, and we had the largest fleet of LNGs and CNGs. And, Delhi became much less polluted. After 17 years, we are back to where we were. That again you see of health hazards and, automotive, because there was a policy that allowed diesel to be used in cars, because at that time the differential cost between petrol and diesel, unfortunately because of subsidy, was huge.
Yeah.
And people just kept going forward and buying diesel cars. Now, in 2 years or 3 years, we have brought the city down to, again, a very polluted state. So I think we've got to move away, from diesel cannot be and should not be used in cars, and in the future 10, 15 years, we must have a certain percentage, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 10, of electric cars in India as well.
So we spoke about solar, we spoke about wind, we spoke about hydrothermal. We also look at automotive industry. You mentioned nuclear energy, and in your initial formula, the 50, 20, 30, 20% was what you had suggested about nuclear energy. Now, worldwide, there's been either a lessening of usage, reliance on nuclear, largely after Chernobyl, not after Chernobyl, after Fukushima, more like Fukushima. So is 20% still a relevant number that we could look from nuclear energies?
I think yes. Sometimes we do have strong reactions to certain events in the world. Space shuttle programs, we've had a debacle, but the NASA program cannot stop space shuttles. So such, unfortunately, sometimes it happens. But why I think it should not happen in India, and why we should actually go with nuclear from 2 to 20% is another reason. Worldwide, Indians are known to have extremely good capabilities in nuclear science and technology. We have designed all kind of nuclear devices, both for safe zone and unsafe zones as well. We've done extremely well in terms of internal domain knowledge that we have. And we have an extremely high source of thorium. We've been using plutonium so far, but uranium and all that. But we have thorium as well. So because our know-how of handling nuclear is so high, I don't really see a major challenge that we don't know how to handle nuclear plants. So with due respect to all the activists, I would sincerely request them that, we've handled nuclear situations and designs very well in this country, and we are very responsible. We are a peace-loving nation. We can do that. So let's go from 2 to 5 to 8 to 10 to 20, because, the energy demand is so high that no one thing can answer. And all these are 3 to 5 year programs. So we have to start now, and the nuclear plant, the first one will come after 5 years.
That's right. The gestation period is long.
It's huge. And thank God we had President Obama who was here, Vladimir Putin also was here, and they all have given their commitment to installing more nuclear plants. So I think we are very well poised to take that at 20% in the next 15 years or so.
So you feel confident that the 50-20-30 ratio is achievable over the next 1 decade?
I would say maybe a decade and a half.
Like a decade and a half.
I would say that it is achievable. We just need to put our and keep executing and keep executing and keep executing. That's all there is to it.
So energy security is critical for any nation's development, and we, as we mentioned, are on the cusp of transformational growth. And Neeraj, you feel confident that we will be able to make it, given the steps that we are taking in the field and our resources that we have, the basket of resources that we have.
I do believe, because there are two factors that are playing very, very strongly at this point in India. One is a relatively good sweet spot we got into. Our inflation is down, thanks to all the commodity prices and oil and gas prices worldwide, which is low. And second is there's a new sense of optimism in this country, and the leadership out there means business from ground up, not top down, from bottom up. So I think these are historic times. We're looking at the world figures. We're looking at India as again regaining its 2,000-year-old glory of being at least the top 4 or 5 economies in the world. There is no escapism out of this. We've got to go through the energy sector and make sure that we have the energy to do all this.
On that positive note, Mr. Neeraj Sharan, thank you for talking to us.
Thanks a lot, Ravi. Thanks for calling me here.
You heard an interview with Sri Neeraj Sharan, international energy expert, on the topic leveraging India's resources for sustainable energy. In conversation with him was V. Ravi Kumar. Broadcast in a national program of talks, this came to you from All India Radio, Delhi.